In Venice, on the first day of the month of Cheshvan in the Jewish year 5383, corresponding to the 5th day of October 1622 on the Christian calendar, the Mantuan composer Salamone Rossi Ebreo signed the dedication page for the publication of an extraordinary volume, the first of its kind, a collection of 33 choral motets in Hebrew for use in the synagogue, in the style of Italian church and secular music. In these videos, we will examine not only Rossi's Hebrew compositions, but the culture that made them possible. What was life like for Jews in Venice and Mantua? How was it that such a rich hybrid culture developed there and at that time? Jewish life in Venice and Mantua in the 16th and 17th centuries was complicated. To a certain extent, Jews were tolerated, in some cases welcomed, even admired. For the most part, Jews lived in their own communities, either by choice or by coercion. There were Jewish street cleaners and porters, bakers, butchers, grocers, water carriers, and rag vendors. There were also Jewish scholars and rabbis. Jews interacted with their Christian neighbors as physicians, bankers, pawnbrokers, and merchants. Christian scholars who wanted to read the Hebrew Bible in its original language sought out rabbis as teachers. On the other hand, Jews were required to wear clothing that distinguished them from Christians. They were not allowed to purchase or own property. They were sometimes forced to sit through weekly sermons in churches to encourage them to convert. And in 1516, Jews in Venice were required to live in a sequestered area of the island. The area had formerly been the site of a foundry, ghetto in Italian, or ghetto in Venetian, an area where the waste from the old copper smelter had been dumped. The gates to the ghetto were locked at night, and Jews were not allowed to leave, at least in theory. While this sounds draconian, there were some benefits. Jews now had a place to live on the island of Venice rather than on the mainland, providing them with a relatively safe space and facilitating commerce with the Christians of Venice. With its walls and bridges, Venice's Ghetto Nuovo appeared to be a city within a city. It housed some 700 Jews. In 1541, an extension, the Ghetto Vecchio, was added, and in 1633, the Ghetto Novissimo. By the late 1620s, there were almost 3,000 Jews in the ghetto, comprising almost 3% of the total Venetian population. Since the ghetto could not be expanded horizontally, it grew vertically. Some of the buildings were as tall as 9 stories, the highest residencies in the area. The ghetto housed several different Jewish communities, each of which had its own synagogue. There were Italian Jews who had been in the peninsula since before the beginning of the Christian era, and there were the Iberian Jews who arrived after the expulsions of 1492 and 1497, and subsequently the Ottoman Jews from the east and the Ashkenazi Jews from the north. Jewish women were generally not in the forefront of these societies, but there were notable exceptions. The most prominent was Sarah Coppia Sulam, known as the poetess of the ghetto. Sarah came from a wealthy Venetian family and married into a wealthy Mantuan family. Her husband, Jacob Sulam, was the brother of Moses Sulam, patron of the Mantuan Jewish composer Salamone Rossi, and to whom Rossi dedicated his synagogue music. Sarah carried on a lengthy and controversial correspondence with Ansaldo Seba. Several of her writings were published, including her Manifesto on the Immortality of the Soul, and Sarah hosted renowned literary salons in the ghetto. Some of the Jewish residents of Venice and Mantua had become rather wealthy, especially the Jewish bankers. Their homes were decorated lavishly, and they built beautiful synagogues. And Venice at this time was a cosmopolitan city, a center for trade between Europe and North Africa, and between Europe and Asia. Venice was also a hub of innovations in publishing, including Hebrew printing. Daniel Bomberg's press issued more than 200 books, including the first rabbinic Bible in 1517. We invite you to enter and explore this unique and beautiful music, as well as the fascinating communities in which it was produced.